Good evening. Welcome to the March 1st, 2022 meeting of the Dover School Committee, Sherborn School Committee, and Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee. My name is Sarah Gutierrez Dunn, and I am standing in for Nancy Cordell this evening. I call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. This open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with the Act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021. Information on how to join remote school committee meetings and meeting agendas are posted on the Dover-Sherborn District website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, and please be aware that anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. First on our agenda this evening is community comments. Before I read the preamble, is anyone present who would like to make a community comment this evening? Please raise your hand if so. I'm not seeing any raised hands. All right, moving on to our next agenda item is an update from our superintendent, Kathleen Smith. Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, and welcome to the joint school committees. I do want to start out this evening, as I did before vacation, speaking about the loss of our beloved student, Owen Bingham. I say that because I think the time is right to speak about the tremendous loss and the people that have come together in this community. From our teachers to Principal John Smith, Assistant Principal Ann Dever Keegan. It has just been an effort to make sure that our children, our extended community, has all the support that they need. So I say this in knowing that this is going to be a hole in the heart of so many people for years and years to come. But I do want you to know that today, when I met with all of the principals, John included, I was pleased to hear that they continue to provide supports, the therapy dogs who have just been so welcomed and so important for the kids to have somebody to, or something to hug. I'm going to say somebody to hug and to make them feel good. They're coming in a couple of days. Our counselors are there, and they are certainly on alert as to those students that need that extra support. We're trying, if you can possibly do that, return to anything that you would call normal. But again, I just want to say I am so appreciative as the superintendent, knowing that this community came together from every school, every one of your schools, supporting the high school, the middle school, Pine Hill, where Owen attended for so many years. So again, we are always here to support his mom, his brother, his family, his friends, and the entire Dover-Sherborn community. So thank you for that moment to recognize all of the support. And I'd like to have Dawn help me this evening to do the slideshow so I can present to you.
Besides being a great workout and fun for the whole family, the Bounce League is also.
Improvements and rehabilitation and things like this, and this is really unique about this one.
I'm sorry, I think someone named iPhone is not on mute.
Yeah,
You
hold
can
on
get for 400 euros or 500-600 US.
Really?
Hold on, let me see if I can multitask here. Okay, Kathy, you should be good.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. And I usually don't land on the opening, but I want you to know, again, our creative assistant superintendent or superintendent-elect, Beth McCoy, put together a new logo for us for now. And you see the Raider, and you see that there is the Raider. Well, I guess he's always masked when you really look at the Raider, but you see the masked Raider and the unmasked Raider. So thank you. Next slide, please. So hopefully I'm taking us back for the last time, but just to regroup and to see where we're at. And I'm going, well, let me start. So I think all of you are aware, we certainly have been communicating to all of our staff and our families for the past 3 weeks since we became aware that the state mask requirement would not be renewed as of yesterday, March 28th. And I do want you to know that before this happened, actually simultaneously, I had been informing you that every one of our schools in DS, so from our high school to our middle school to Chickering to Pine Hill, every one of them had reached that 80% vaccination rate, actually even higher. And we were able to apply with the attestation form so that we would have the authority as to when we decided we would unmask. And that was approved. So for what that's worth, I just want you to know the efforts that went in. We did hear back from the state. So school districts are now, as of the 28th, granted the authority to develop our own local guidelines. One of the things that you did in your face covering policy, and I want to make this clear, and I know it's a little bit confusing, but you actually approved your face covering policy, and that policy is policy EBCFA. I believe you actually came together as a group sometime in November to review the policy again. And one of the things that you made clear to me was, especially in a situation like this, our face covering policy still remains in effect. But this is considered, what I'm going to talk about tonight, an exception to that policy. Because what we don't know, we're very hopeful, and I do have members of our boards of health, our health and hygiene advisory on this evening. We speak often. Again, you hear how I thank them for all their support and their knowledge in helping us to really look at data and to make decisions that are in the best interest of our school community. So that being said, the policy allows your school leader, your superintendent, to take a look at and work with, Department of Public Health, DPH Guidelines, your boards of health in making decisions for the district. That does not mean that the policy is still not in effect. It is. If we ever had to pivot, we're not coming back and forth for votes from all three of our school committees. So again, after consulting and spending hours with boards of health, health and hygiene advisory, reviewing the Department of Public Health guidance, masks will be optional in the district as of March 7th, which is next Monday. We also were informed on February 25th during the winter break that masks will also be optional on school buses. That directive came from CDC, and that in the district is my recommendation that we will go masks optional on our buses also as of March 7th, 2022, next Monday. And again, any future mask requirement, DESE made it clear that although we were at 80%, that threshold in every one of our schools, if they happen to have another mask requirement, and I'm not sure at what point that would be, it might not be this year. It could be the start of the next school year as we enter kind of what you would call flu season. It may be something that, again, you would have to, as far as the attestation form, there may be a different kind of policy we have to meet before authority comes back to the local district. So I know that's something we're not focusing on right now, but I just wanted you to know because we spent so much time on that. Next slide, please. So the reason that we did this, what are our strategies for success? And I know there were, and I have to tell you, I received some calls from parents, I received emails, and some were saying, Superintendent, please don't unmask. And they had reasons for being concerned. And then I had others that said, Superintendent, we should have unmasked a long time ago. This is concerning for our children. It is difficult. So I understand both sides, and I know what this has felt. And first of all, before I even go on, I want to thank all of those families. And I know this hasn't been easy, but you have really stuck with us. You have been clearly partners, and that doesn't mean whether you agree or not agree with us. I understand, and I really do respect, your feelings about this, but I want you to know that we have your children's best interest at heart and those of our staff members in the schools. So again, in order for strategies for success in making the decision we made, so data indicates a rise in positive cases that follow school vacations. And you are communities, Dover and Sherborn, where many families are traveling over the break. So students and staff, again, engage in a variety of social gatherings, especially during the winter break or their holidays. And what we do know is there an incubation period for COVID-19 positive cases. And it's typically, especially with Omicron, 3 to 5 days. So our decision was to continue masking for 5 days after vacation. We are in those 5 days. We actually only have 3 days left, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And it would give us the best chance for successfully transitioning to a mask optional community on March 7th. I also will tell you that we have had lengthy discussions that should clusters of cases occur beyond March 7th, our school nurses will make recommendations to ensure the health and safety of our individuals, small groups, classrooms, and or schools. And what I mean by that is we will focus on where that cluster is coming from. We will work with our boards of health and hygiene, our medical professionals to try to zero in and not necessarily mask or close down a school. We will try to deal with, again, the cases as they come. And it's going to be interesting because the next bullet is school leaders and staff. We'll start to prepare our students for return to a more typical school environment. And we are really excited to do this. So I will tell you that I'm even hearing from parents that they are knowing that kids are coming home, and in our classrooms, even with our youngest students, we are talking about, and I'll show you in slides coming up, that we are teaching our kids about this optional choice coming up and respecting each other's choices and getting them prepared for something they haven't been able to do in, well, let's face it, 2 years. So we are feeling very good about this decision and where we're at right now. Next slide, please. This was updated by our nurse supervisor, Jill Fedor. We didn't see much movement in our middle and high school, but we did with our elementary schools as some of our students, again, are becoming fully vaccinated. So again, high vaccination rates. I would say probably some of the highest in the state. 99% across all 4 schools. And as far as fully vaccinated students, we're at 85%. I think that's important. As far as going forward. I know there is a study out there the doctors were sharing with us today where it's, again, I'm not sure, there is a report out that is talking about the 5 to 11-year-olds vaccination. And I'm probably not going to use the right word here, but the amount of time that it would be protecting those youngsters, I think it's in question. I think they were hoping for a longer length of time for protection. So that is something we'll obviously watch very closely. Next slide, please. So we also, again, our mitigation strategies, and parents, we need your support with this. If our students and staff should stay home and be tested if experiencing any of the COVID-19 symptoms. If caregivers have questions, need help assessing their child's health symptoms, or do not have access to COVID-19 tests, they should immediately contact their school nurse. And we're really pleased that we have opportunities for these home tests. So we're providing them every 2 weeks, 2 tests for every one of our students, if the parents have opted in, and our staff members, if staff members have opted in. We are still requiring masking in our school health offices, as is the practice in mass healthcare settings. And our nurses will make decisions. For instance, if they have an empty office and there's a student that comes on a daily basis, could be a diabetic student getting support from the nurse. If there is no one in the office, the nurse, again, will respect the choice. If the student wears a mask, the nurse will obviously wear that mask. But if the student comes in, is not wearing the mask, then, and if it's safe in that healthcare setting, that will be allowed. We do have masks available. We're still asking parents to make sure you tuck that in the backpack for our younger students, just to make sure if they need it during the school day. And this would be one of those times where it would be required. But again, the nurse will work with our students seeking health in the healthcare office. So we're strongly recommending the masking for unvaccinated individuals and those that are medically vulnerable. And again, our little preschoolers haven't had the opportunity for vaccination, so we're strongly recommending for preschool students when possible. Next slide, please. So our testing options, we still have symptomatic diagnostic testing available to any student or staff member who experiences the COVID-19 symptoms during the school day. We have that in the health office. It's the Abbott BioNext Now rapid antigen test. As I said, we also have the at-home antigen testing program where we are giving out the home tests, and I think the parents are well aware of this. If you haven't opted in, we have a link here on which will be posted on this presentation. And we this week did make sure that we had available our drive-up symptomatic testing for individuals. I'm happy to tell you, although CICR partners are here every day at Central Administration, we have had nobody pre-registering. So that is good news. So people have options, is our guess, if they have any concern. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but we were actually excited that we're actually starting to see some illnesses, minor illnesses that are not COVID related. So it's been a long time since we've seen a child come in with a fever and it has not been COVID positive. So whether that is signs of us returning to what we would call a typical school day for illnesses that certainly happen throughout the school year. We will continue this clinic and it'll run right through Friday if in fact there are people out there. So mask optional settings. I just want to call out, obviously, all our classrooms, our schools, during lunch, during break, during snack, assemblies and events. One of the things that has just gone out there is, I believe, our middle school production of Beauty and the Beast. This is going to be very exciting. You know, we will see that as a place where parents in the community can come and see a production where, again, when we've done this in the past, we tiptoed in, we still had masks with our children singing and performing on stage. So again, these will be mask optional events, and it will allow us to really test our resiliency here. During our athletics, for our athletes and our spectators, masks optional, any of our extracurricular activities, and any visitors in the buildings. You know, you will also have the choice to wear a mask or not. And again, I guess we're excited when I talk about athletics too. As you mentioned, Judy, you're excited about March 1st. Well, I'm excited that we're entering the spring season for our athletics, which takes us outside for, I think, just about all of them. So again, we're entering hopefully a very positive time as we move forward. Next slide, please. And this, I think, is terrific. So Darren Buck is a teacher at our high school. And when we were talking about this, because the school committee made it very clear that they expected there to be respect as far as people's choice go, our children's choices, families' choices, our staff choices. So these are actually your students. And I hope you can make out that there are older students and you see mask, unmasked, to respect the choice. We have middle school students and we have our little ones from one of our elementary school. I believe this one is Chickering. And I laughed today because Principal John Smith said there's a contest at the high school to try to figure out who the kids are. So I think this is great. This is a silhouette. These are posters going up all over our schools. And as I said, there are little lessons going on for our young students. And we are having these discussions, which is so important for our kids to come to school, to feel supported in whatever their choice is. I feel like a month from now, this is going to be something that, as everything, you've always handled really well in the district. Next slide, please. Can I go back, please, Dawn? I'm sorry. So before I introduce our communications consultant, so let me stop there because I do know I have members of Health and Hygiene, Board of Health. So I'm going to guess you have a lot of questions. I also want to tell you from some of our discussions, although I hope I sound very positive this evening, I feel very strongly after data and everything is going in the right direction, but we are not done with this pandemic. You know, hopefully it's an endemic. I think when we go forward, you've heard people talk about, you know, getting back to normal, but understanding how we will have to live in a very different society in making sure there are times where we are making sure that we are protected, whether we're protecting our elderly, people that are compromised. So I just want to make sure I make that clear to everybody. COVID is still alive and well, and I don't want to tell you, but we've had, you know, a number of cases coming back from vacation just as we thought. So it's not a lot of cases. We're really pleased with the direction we're going in, but I want to thank again our partners who have just been so helpful in sharing data each week and really having conversations about how to best support our district. So let me open it up to questions.
Thank you, Kathy, for that overview, and to all of our health and hygiene advisors who've helped us along the way. Are there questions by committee members? Liz, I see you've got your hand up.
I don't know that I specifically, well, first of all, thank you. That was really clear and thorough, and I appreciate everyone's deep thought that went behind all of this. And it's nice to, rest easy knowing that it's based on science and you guys have done like really thoughtful process here. My one question, I just want to make sure that it's like clearly stated if this is the case. If a student who typically chooses to unmask becomes ill with COVID and they stay home for the 5 days, is it school protocol that then for the following 5 days, if their symptoms have improved and they're allowed to come back to school, that they would then wear a mask in school for those 5 days? Or can they continue to just come back to school unmasked? I just want to make sure that that's a clear expectation.
Liz, thank goodness, because you always bring up things we should have discussed. I'm going to leave this to Jill Fedor. Let her answer this for you.
So absolutely, yes, that is a DPH and a DESI guideline that remains in place regardless of whether we're a mask optional community or not. If a person is coming back from COVID, a student or a staff member, they can return after day 5, but strict mask wearing days 6 through day 10. And they shouldn't be returning on day 6 if they're still symptomatic. So those protocols all stay in place.
Sorry, Maggie?
Thanks. One question I have just in terms of practicality, knowing that sometimes parents have one idea for what children should do, and children sometimes have a different idea. And I say this as somebody with a lazy eye who was supposed to wear a patch to school. And that is why I am currently legally blind in one eye. How will the school handle a situation where a parent writes to the school or the teacher and says, I insist my child wear a mask all the time, and in fact the child's mask doesn't there? Like, whose responsibility is that? And have we sort of thought about what parents can expect in terms of the school being able to make that happen if the child is not on the same page as the parent?
Well, I think the first thing that I would say, Maggie, and I certainly anticipate this, and I'm sure our principals do throughout the district, depending on the age of the students, I can imagine what they've always done, have conversations, with our students, certainly speak to the parents. We don't want it to be a disciplinary type thing. And one of the things that we had said earlier, and I'm not sure if I'm exactly answering this question. At one point, it was told, if any of you remember, that if we were going to be allowed to unmask, if you were unvaccinated, you would still have to mask. And that became just a really, we were not going to be the masking police. That is not what we're here to do. Our kids have really, and I don't want to say suffered enough, but, they've been through some really challenging times for young people. And, again, we'll work with the families and we will do the best that we can because, you make a good point. There could be somebody that has a very good reason why they would need to wear anything. And I'm looking at my educators here. It wouldn't just have to be a mask. Somebody might have, a brace, a sling. I could go on with things that glasses, your child needs to have glasses in the classroom. So we will do the best that we can and support our families and our students. I think it's a lot easier if you all tell your children that it's their choice.
Thank you. I think that's the reasonable way to go. And I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. Lynn?
I just want to thank with all of my heart the Health and Hygiene Committee and all the advice and thought and time that has gone into this very difficult issue. And, because as volunteers who are, who have signed up to do and make the best possible decisions for our community, we have the luxury of dedicated, committed, and extremely qualified, probably some of the most qualified people to help us through these very difficult decisions. And I feel that we are fortunate, and I can't thank this group enough for the collaboration and just all the time and effort that you've put into this for the community and for us, the school committees. Hasn't been easy, and it's so much appreciated.
Hear, hear. Other questions, comments, Colleen?
Thank you. And I echo what Lynn just said. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your guidance through all of this. I just wanted to bring up that there may be teachers with unvaccinated, very young children at home, and also vulnerable family members they may live with or care for, and just that we encourage, their choice as well to continue wearing a mask if that is really what they should be doing, and we make sure that they have high quality, masks at their disposal. I think that's really important for everyone to feel accepted in their choice, and that includes teachers. I also had a question about what sort of thresholds would we be looking at if we were to return to masking? Is that a community, sort of the existence of the disease in the community, or is it more of a state level, or is that something we tackle as we come to it?
So doctors, do you want to take this?
I'm happy to tackle it. I heard last time when I wasn't here, it took up to 10 seconds for somebody to talk. So I'll make sure we avoid that. So I think it's probably not blanket community level prevalence. And part of that is as we see the at-home testing dramatically increase, our ability to get reliable data on a sort of population level with Maven and the individual level reporting will really change and evolve. So my hope is that we are able to avoid being in a position to need to remask across the district. If we get another surge like we had, in January, as we look at our communities, we had basically as many cases between November and January as we did in the entire pandemic before that date. And the sort of risk of disruption and everything else, especially with vulnerable community members, is real. What I think is more likely is that we'll have small clusters that occur, whether that's related to out of school social contact or a particular pattern of classroom exposure, other pieces. And so I think having good testing strategies will probably be the first ring of that protection. But that if you do say, as a community, what's our number one value? And for me, kind of what I bring to the table is safe is number one, and in person is a really close number two. And I think that if we get to situations where we have some concern about spread, but we still really want to prioritize our kids being safely in the classroom, using testing will be part of it. But we may get to scenarios where local masking is necessary. I don't know that we want to say, here's the line in the sand, or here's how many cases in the classroom. I think it really has to be a tailored response. And I think the other point that Matt Beavers has made in a bunch of our discussions is this is all right now. And so I think that the good days and the bad days need to look different. And we're in a period of good days now, and we should take advantage of those and enjoy them. Going back to the March analogy, if it's 70 degrees, by God, go outside. But if it's 15 degrees, wear your coat. I think it's sort of analogous that we're going to see waxing and waning of this. And in a period where it's less disruptive, I think using that is prudent. But it's hard to project what's going to happen next winter, or is there going to be another variant that really changes it? So I don't want people to feel like the ground's changing on them if that comes up. But I think our hope is that this is a phase where we're kind of making those switches as we get both access to testing. And then we also, if you look at the sort of infection fatality rate, which is a morbid number to use, it's down 90% for a given person having COVID. The current mortality rate is about 1/10 what it was in July of 2020. So that also needs to change as we think about what does this mean. It doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean we don't need to minimize it, but it does mean those are different numbers, and that should matter. And if it doesn't matter, we're probably not using data the way that we need to be thoughtful and balance different kinds of risk. I'll sort of go on mute there because I talk too much, and invite Kay or Matt or Alexia if she's on.
Thank you.
I would just say that the Reader's Digest version of that is, it depends. And just to expound a little bit, it's impossible to know what's going to happen. And I agree that we need to enjoy the time we have now and be vigilant and think about what may happen, and hope that we won't have another surge and there won't be new variants that are particularly troublesome, but no one can predict that. So it means we pay attention and we're prepared to pivot if we need to, but hopefully we won't.
Thank you.
I think the only thing I would add is that Mrs. Smith alluded to the vaccine protection in children and sort of how that's going to play out. There's a lot still unknown, such as protection from severity. And at the same time, there's a lot showing that the risk of MISC, so the multi-system inflammatory disease after vaccination, is almost 100-fold reduced. And that in itself can be much more dangerous than COVID in kids, clearly more rare. Right. And so this is evolving over time as we learn more, and would still encourage members of the community to become fully vaccinated and clearly boosted as more populations become eligible for that. Because the more vaccinated and protected we are, the easier it is to relax other public health protections.
Thank you all so very much for that guidance and for helping us throughout this experience with the twists and turns, and we could not be more grateful. Other questions, comments from committee members concerning unmasking? I don't have everybody on my same screen, but I'm not seeing anything. All right. Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Let me, first of all, I don't know if I need to go back to the slides yet. Let me first of all introduce, I know that the school committee is aware, and this goes back to my meeting all of you and talking about, I call the so-called big rocks, the things to accomplish. And it's amazing to me that I have a few short months left, and I know we're all excited about Superintendent-elect Beth McCoy coming on board. But I say that because there were some things that I needed to focus on, and two of them I'm really pleased to talk about this evening. One is to introduce you. When we put out the ad for a communication specialist, I knew clearly that we needed to take a look at our website, making sure that our communication was clear, to find out what our community needed in communication from the superintendent, our principals, the schools, talk about branding our district, talking about a superintendent newsletter, or ways to talk about the good news that that happens in the Dover-Sherborn School District. And we talked about what we called a progress report or district report card, again, to share with your community and beyond, all of the things that you offer your students here. So it's been a really difficult job market for getting people on board. And we were so excited when we got an application with one of your own residents from Sherborn. So I'm going to introduce you to Dana Lanham. I met with her back a couple of months ago now. I know the assistant superintendent met with her. We brought her to meet our executive team, Dawn Fattori, Kate McCarthy, myself, and Beth. We were very impressed with her knowledge of the district. Her children attend school here, and that she would come on board right now as a contractor to work with us on the very specific projects I talked about. So it would be doing a communication survey, another project again about branding and developing a style guide for the district. Again, looking at newsletter templates, superintendent communication, and then doing our annual district progress report. And one of the things we're also seeing, so I want to tell you before I bring her on board, is we don't see this ending on June 30th. We see this going into FY23. So again, it's already March 1st. We have a lot on our plates and a lot to accomplish. So let me introduce you to Dana and let her answer any questions you may have. I'm going to look forward to bringing her. You'll hear from her when we get our survey out, but bringing her before the committee to talk about, again, our website and branding. So Dana, welcome, and let me introduce you to the Joint School Committee.
Nice to meet you guys. I'm excited. I've met with Kathleen and Beth and Dawn, and obviously Kathleen and I have had some time together, but I came here from the South a couple of years ago from Davidson, North Carolina. We moved to Wellesley at first, but found our home here in Sherborn. I have been wholeheartedly impressed with my children's education. Coming from the South, in our area, you really needed private school. I was lucky to be in Davidson as a splinter part of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. But I wanted the best education for my child, and really have found this community to be perfect for my children. It's the right size, it's the right fit, it's inclusive, and as a marketer, I don't think we're getting enough credit for it. So I'm excited to be aboard to help get that credit. And when people come to this state, I want them to come to this community, and I want them to understand what this district has to offer. My little one was at Pine Hill. He's now at the middle school. He's thriving. And he's an ADHD kid, which I know that's overused, but he truly went through the whole neuropsych evaluation for us to figure out what was, truly happening there. And he's thriving right now, and he's making friends. He's still a 12-year-old little boy. And then I have a 16-year-old Morgan, who some of you know. And she's had her struggles through the pandemic and even prior. And I'm finding that the systems and programs that she's going through right now are state of the art, caring, again, inclusive as she struggles with everything a teenager does. And again, as a marketer and a strategist first, I think it's really important that we make it very clear what this community has to offer. As a marketer, we start with something called the USP, which is the unique selling proposition. We don't have to sell anything here, but we do need to celebrate it. So I really look forward to working with the stakeholders first, with some research to understand what we can be doing for them first and foremost. And we know who those stakeholders are, both from a committee standpoint and from a community standpoint, our teachers, our parents, our students, the DS community, like our local community, Greater Boston. We know who we compete with. And I'm a marketer first, so I'm competitive. And I think you have to understand, who your strengths are. And then over and beyond that, becoming a thought leader around both the local community, the regional community, and the national community, so that our kids thrive and we get credit once again for what our great teachers are doing, what our advisors are doing, what our community is doing, what are the employees are doing. That's important. And so a cohesive approach and a unified approach so that logos line up and they're professional looking. Beth, you're doing an amazing job. So I know you're, superintendent coming, but you also do a great job on the digital side of marketing. So thank you. Love a partner. And, getting credit. I say thought leadership. I've written this down continuously, like what matters to me as a parent. Thought leadership, continuous learning and improvement, inclusive and collaborative community, communicative but concise and consistent. Let's not overdo it with a million emails. Let's make sure we're focused and prioritized. Branded in look, tone, and personality, and celebratory, right? Get credit for everything in the district, from music and sports to the GRIT program in special ed, to, again, celebrating everything that's coming in and everything that's going out. So from all 4 schools and making sure that our signage and everything looks the same but different. I get it. Like, you know, there's little logos at Pine Hill and Chickering, but we're going to clean it up a little bit as well. And then again, communicating the progress that is made every year that we need to celebrate. And again, I say communicate outward because we're DS, right? We are DS, and, you know, we've never changed, right? But we're going to continue to improve. And I think that's what marketing and communications will bring. But again, I will say very clearly, I'm a parent first. And so as a parent and stakeholder, I want to make sure we get credit for what everybody is doing. But that means bringing it all together and understanding what the stakeholders want from us first. So, you know, Beth and Kathleen, I think the first thing that you guys want to do is a survey. So that's the first thing we'll be creating. And I'm a trained marketing researcher. So we'll be working with all of you to make sure we answer all the questions first, and then, you know, start kind of drilling away at what needs to happen next. So anyway, sorry, verbose, but I'm very excited to be here if you hadn't figured it out. It's near and dear to my heart as a former educator as well. So anyway, any questions?
Thank you, Dana. Welcome, and it's very nice to meet you, and I look forward to seeing more as this unfolds. Questions from committee members? Going once, going twice. Lynn?
When I joined the school committee, we were talking about the importance of, you know, upping the communications and the website, and so it was already in the works. And then, you know, COVID and start times and everything just sort of took over. So I never got sort of a sense of what are the main deficiencies that we're trying to address with this. And I mean, having had 2 kids go through the system, I have some thoughts around that. Like I suspect I know what those issues are, but I've never been part of a conversation as a group around what it is what's the problem we're trying to fix.
Right. I think, you know, answering that question just really briefly, the first thing I say is who's your customer and what matters most to them. So that's where that survey comes in, right? Because we may think we're supposed to fix a website, which I think we all know we need to fix a website, but they may say something completely different. So, you know, I'm a hunter and gatherer first of that information, because, you know, my priority may not be the priority of, you know, the consumer as a whole or the stakeholder as a whole. So, you know, right now, what we've set as the overall objectives is, number one, understand stakeholder needs and develop communications that fulfill them. Second is create a unified and consistent district communications approach and a process so that, like, if I disappear or anybody else disappears, that process is in place. So, like, it doesn't become flavor of the month on your communications. It's already set, and anybody that comes and fills the, you know, seat will be able to continuously do it. So we want a, you know, district communications approach that everybody can follow while organizing and prioritizing messages and timing. We get a lot of emails. We don't read them all. So how do we best want to deliver that information so everybody gets it in the most effective way? And then continuously improving. If we hear you're giving me too many, okay, we pull back and we figure out how to communicate those in a different way. Develop a look and feel for the overall district that delivers consistency across all 4 schools and programs, allowing them to all be unique, but also still line up to the umbrella that's Dover-Sherborn district. Like, we don't even have a logo right now that is high resolution that could be printed and used everywhere. So that's something that's got to change, right? Like, we've got to be able to hand off a logo anywhere that you can see, like you can actually read it and put it anywhere. So that branding will happen. It's just going to happen a little further down the road because we need to work on stakeholder, you know, research first. And then last is deliver metrics, scorecards, and summaries for the district so the stakeholders can celebrate that success and be abreast of all the progress that's happening every year. So they understand, like, how the taxpayers' money is actually, being used, and it's actually delivering everything that we had promised. And we need to be, once again, getting credit for that. So I think first and foremost is understand stakeholder needs. The website's coming. I think it'll start in July. And it needs to, quite frankly, because it's very hard to navigate right now. And I think, branding and other things can fall quickly behind the stakeholder stuff as well. So hopefully that answered your question, but I think first you start with your customer. What do they want us to do? What do they not like? I mean, I think everybody should be feeding into this survey as well. So like, if you have any questions from, board, committee, everybody, if you've got specific questions that you want answered, we will incorporate them into this survey. And, we're going to get people to answer the survey, because I hear all the time, I can't navigate that website, right? Well, I didn't even know about that. I didn't even see that email. It's probably because there were 3 before it, and they read the 3 before, but they never got to it. So then there's the PTO emails that come out. So there's emails that come, if you got children in all 3 schools, you are inundated. So how can we fix this? We're going to ask that question to the stakeholders first, because I'll give you my opinion, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just one in lots of other people. So anyway, hopefully that answered you, Lynn.
Yeah, it did. I mean, but I also wanted a sense of like, what was it that caused us to decide that we need you? And I think I do think we do. Yeah, it just, I've never been part of a school committee conversation around that issue that we're trying to address.
Yeah, this is a challenge, right? I think Kathleen and Beth have talked about what they need as well. So for me, it's a great challenge because I love branding and, strategy coming from my background. But, a school is a product like any other product that we use as a consumer. And you have to make sure that your consumer is getting everything they need to feel happy, right? And loyal. And
one of the things I will tell you coming to this district, and obviously I come from a very different district that had a very different need for communicating. And I'm just going to say this, I came from a district where we had a whole program on Choose Us, because we didn't want kids leaving the district and choosing another place. We wanted to share. So I say that to you because I come here. I'm so excited to come to Dover-Sherborn, and you've never disappointed me. I'll tell you that. And my point is, I would look at some of your competitors, and you talk about, again, I understand about challenge success. I think we're doing great work here. But also when I look at a district report card in a competitive district, and I think, oh my goodness, in speaking to your teams here, this is going on at DS. We need to be able to put all of this together, to really, Dana uses the word market. Yeah, it is marketing, but it's putting it out there, nationwide. And I know you've gotten that kind of recognition, certainly from your graduates, et cetera. But I just think there's so much to offer. The website really has been difficult. You have, thank God, and we keep saying this, Beth, a talented assistant superintendent who last year during COVID, or the past 2 years, was able to create something totally different than your website, so that you'd have all your COVID information. All of that should have been part of your website. So we have a long way to go here. You've made a commitment budget-wise. And again, this is the right time to do it. You have such transitions happening right now. So selfishly, I will also tell you, I spend a lot of time, and this has not always been the way, and it's not just myself, it's superintendents all over. When you talk about crisis communication, it's exhausting. And thank goodness I can say to Jill Fedor, Jill, come on board and join me, and let's talk about communicating, unmasking, or let's put together clear information. Today I'm grabbing people and we're talking about, again, what we're dealing with right now worldwide. And we're trying to come up with ways to make sure that we are continually supporting our students, and just to have, again, a communication specialist, who can kind of step in. And I know from having done this, that once Dana works with the team here, you get to know the team, you get to know the superintendent, you get to know exactly how to communicate, and making sure the worst thing you can do is miss something or offend somebody, or that's not what we're here to do. We are here to support our students and our families. I could go on and on about communication. I don't know if tonight's the night. I really just wanted to introduce Dana, but we're really excited about what's to come, and I'll be watching you. I'm really excited.
Beth, did you want to add to that before we get to other questions?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. I would just add that rewinding back to 5 years ago when Andrew set off on his listening tour and developed the initial strategic plan, this was a topic that came up a number of times from different stakeholders, parents, school committee members, educators, students. So as you said, Lynn, it was a journey we started on. We created a committee, and unfortunately it fell apart because of the pandemic. So I think it's a great opportunity with Dana's leadership to bring everybody back together, like Dana said, decide what questions we want to ask and reboot it and hopefully be able to make progress with it this time.
Thanks, Beth. Maggie?
Hi, I have a dog problem going on here. I guess I wanted to weigh in on Lynn's question from earlier about kind of what was the genesis of all of this. I think specifically thinking back to when we created the sort of the case study for the superintendent when we were hiring Andrew, way back then. I was fortunate to be part of that initial search committee. And way back then, 8 years ago at that point, one of the huge needs that was being articulated by members of the school district, parents, community members, and so forth, was a coherent communication strategy. At that time, we were transitioning from all the papers in the backpacks, which for some of you with older children, you will remember that, into emails, and papers in the backpack became endless individual emails. And so then constant contact came in, and then it was endless, newsletters that had 47 points, and you would miss point 46, and then you would forget to go to the violin concert. And I think that for me, watching the example of Beth doing the entire alternative pandemic school website laid that whole bare. And I think that our expectation as school committee members for many years has been that that's something the superintendent's going to do. We're going to hire a new superintendent, and communication is the first goal. And I remember when we brought Kathleen on, that one of the things that I know I and other members said, you're here for a year. You've been around the block. You have been doing this in other districts for 40 years. One thing we want from you is sort of an informal audit of what do you see in the district that's going well, and what are the things that we don't even see are a mess because we are living in our own little bubble. And in a very short order, she identified, I know in individual meetings, and also I remember from her first meetings in the fall, you do not have a coherent communication strategy. And with great respect to the communications committee, my experience as a professional is that committees are not the most effective way to create a communication strategy. It is very possible for a committee to advise on it and to help do some of the action steps, but sitting around the table and asking 14 people how to communicate is gonna maybe be not the most efficient way. So I really applaud that we're doing this. I applaud that we're doing it on a contract basis. So while Dana, I would love to have you seem like a very nice person who's really good at your job. I also am cognizant of our obligation to the taxpayers. So I really appreciate the contract basis that allows us some flexibility in terms of being able to pay your fair salary in a way that, maybe it ebbs and flows and maybe we don't need it forever. But I guess I'm really appreciative that we are taking this step because, I think about how many times Beth has answered the question of why we have gone down in the rankings. And there's a very complex, thoughtful, nuanced answer that we've made a choice over a decade to prioritize kids' mental health. And sometimes that means that kids take a gap year or they don't take as many AP classes, whatever. But we keep having that question answered, and people keep being horrified by this thing that those of us who've been doing it for a long time understand. And so that for me is an example of why we don't have an effective communication strategy, because we shouldn't have to answer that question 37 times to people who are like understandably like, what the heck? I moved here for number 1 and now I have number 6. This is awful. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm very grateful that we are making this step. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I agree with you 100%. If you're going to focus only on school rankings, then you've completely missed the boat, because I can show you in the toy industry a million different awards that toys have gotten that truthfully are meaningless. And so, you have to pick a priority. And I think, again, stakeholders are going to tell us this, but I doubt seriously it's going to be rankings at this point in time. So we'll see. But my prediction is it won't be rankings. And those rankings are, sorry, I'll say it, BS, right? If you look at who's giving them, it's no different than who tells you what the nicest dress is from the SAG Awards the other night. Big whoop. Big whoop. Is your kid going to get out with a great education and feel good about themselves from Dover-Sherborn? Yep. That's what we want people to understand. And it will take a strong strategy. So I am a very inclusive person. I'm highly collaborative. So understand I'm 56. I've been doing this a long time. I'm a listener. Although I'm a great talker because I'm in marketing, I'm a listener. So you're going to give me as much as I'll take in and try and put into a great strategy. But in the end, it's going to come down to what, parents, students, and faculty say to us, because we all are that as well. So, so I look forward to getting this done with Beth and Kathleen, because I think it's going to be the first step in the right direction. And then we can clean up all the rest of the stuff, truthfully. Logos, colors, websites, all that stuff when we get to it. That's the easy stuff once we have a strategy. It really is. So I thank you. Thank you for the welcome. I appreciate it.
I do see a few other hands. I've got Mark, then Liz, then Angie.
Thank you. I'll be quick. And Dana, thanks so much for sharing your background. I think it really helps inform me in terms of what drives you and kind of your focal area and your take on your approach. I have kids in elementary, middle, and high school this year, and I absolutely felt over my head for the first time ever in terms of parenting kids. So I'm excited about this. I also want to speak briefly, I work in Needham, the district next town over. And I think that an annual report like this is helpful in many ways that we haven't yet recognized. One of which is you can see as an employee within a district where your role fits into the bigger picture, and you get inspired for other ideas on how you can kind of collaborate with others in other buildings or other age groups or partners in the wider community. The other thing is, I do think in terms of real estate, we focus a lot on the input of this, but the output could also be that annual hard copy report card is just there on the counter when families tour a home, and they can see much more than just the title where our rankings are. They see the depth of what makes us wonderful. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Liz?
I'll be real quick too. Thank you for joining the team. I'm really excited about this as well. Maggie touched on what I was going to say with just bringing community together and understanding some of these big issues that pop up often. I've seen what Mark has seen in my school district with an annual report, just how much all stakeholders then understand each other and can get behind a district mission. But the last thing I wanted to say that I'm really excited and hopeful from this, in a time where there can be divisions in a community on all sorts of different topics, I feel like the more that we clearly communicate, the more we will better understand each other and be able to stay in a positive community, moving in the same direction, despite having differences of opinion. So I'm excited that we will be streamlining our thought process with the community.
Thanks, Liz. Angie?
So part of what I have to say, I'll be brief too, is the same as Liz and Mark. But I was the newbie. I came from Atlanta 8 years ago, and there was not a lot of communication online. The website was not good, and there was not a lot of communication sent out. And so my kid was the kid who the first day of school, for the first week actually, is like, there's a snack thing. I'm like, what do you mean there's a snack? I didn't send them with a snack. I didn't know all these things that we were supposed to do. And so I just think if we could centralize it, it does help, and it makes it for a more welcoming community. And I agree with Mark, the more that you can point to having the central database of this is who we are, this is what we do, And like he said, for realtors, that kind of thing in Atlanta, I know that was a big selling point on some of the areas. You know, it was the pointing to the school, and they had these demographics out that talked about, you know, where we were strong, what we provided, and how we included families. So I think this is a good thing, and it's been needed for a while. My kids would have been really happy had I been more on the ball, but I was like, I don't see it anywhere. So this is good.
Thank you, Angie. Anyone else? Well, again, welcome, Dana, and we look forward to seeing how you can help us in this important area.
I'd like to thank Kathleen and Beth and Dawn and Cheryl, she's not there, but for making me feel so welcome. And, you know, it's nervous to walk into a superintendent's office. I'm not in any trouble at all for a change. No, but seriously, thank you guys. I really look forward to making this work. This pulls the heartstrings. I've been an executive consultant for years, and you know, you didn't see my background, but I come from Mattel, Hasbro, Newell Rubbermaid, and Shark Ninja, which is what brought me here. And those are all big brands. So I bring a lot of big brand, but I also understand as a parent and a former educator how important it is that you feel included and that you get credit for what you're doing. And that's all I really want to work on for the next, you know, month and a half, is making sure that we understand everything that's important to them, but also important to us, what we should get credit for as a district. When I say we, I'm part of the community now. So I'm looking forward to this and working with all of you guys to make this happen. So it's going to be a couple of months. It'll be 3 solid months of hard work getting this finished, but it'll lead us into, I think, everything we need for a good website, Beth. Which hopefully you won't have to do yourself this time around.
Well, thank you. Kathy, back to you.
Yeah, I have one more thing to finish up on. Again, when I met with the school committee back in November, December, one of the other so-called big rocks or mandates for this year was we talked about a central office organizational study, or a study of our human resource functions in the district. And at the time when we talked about it, I recommended to all of you not just a human resource audit, which is so very important in any district, but to really look at our whole organization, especially our central office. So I'm very pleased to inform you that, again, we are going to contract with the Collins Center at UMass Boston, who has been a partner for many school districts, what they do, and I'm meeting with them for the first time on Friday. I hope to introduce you at some point to the team that'll work with us, one being Ray Shurtleff, a gentleman that has many, many years experience in central leadership, human resources. He's been with the Collins Center, you know, for a long time, and I am really pleased to welcome him here. I'll be meeting with him on Friday to talk to his team. And an analysis would be looking at a study of the organizational structure, staffing, and practices of central office operations, a review of the human resource functions in the district, and a review of organizational structures and best practices of central office and leadership positions in similar size regional school districts. So I say that those are pretty broad areas. What they will do after spending time with us, going through an analysis, they will make recommendations to us. So the idea being, and I want to be very clear about this, having been part of your central office team, I will tell you again, I'm amazed at the work your team does. Many times they take on additional functions that if you stopped, and one of the things that really resonated with me, and I'm going to use the role of superintendent, assistant superintendent, you know, there may be some things that we're dealing with of a human resource nature that, and again, some of them, again, if it belongs in another area, it allows us to be in the schools. It allows us to be supporting our principals. It allows us to be in the classrooms. You know, a good day for me, and you hear me say this all the time, is when I can actually get into the schools and see what is happening at every one of your schools. So in order to do this, you need to really take a deep dive. So this is being welcomed by your principals, who also, again, rely on us functioning as a very strong central office team. And the other thing that I want to say, and this does not mean added positions. What it means is to take a look. It could be a realignment. You know, you're doing equity work right now. You're looking, and these are districts across this country, looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talked today about our hiring practices as we start to, again, look at our openings and going forward and wanting to attract diversity to our district. I say all of this. This doesn't happen by circumstance. It happens by having people in places where we can, again, put ourselves out there, supporting our principals, getting the right candidates in place so these things can happen. So I'm using that as an example, but, you know, it is time, and there are a lot of changes happening in education that we just want to make sure that we are getting a strong analysis of our functions and how we're operating. And I hope to be able to report to you again in the next couple of months. We're going to be starting the project very soon. So,
thank you, Kathy. Questions or comments about the central office study? All right. Hearing none, I think we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the superintendent-elect contract. Does one of the members of the negotiation team want to, Judy, walk us through some of the highlights?
Yeah, so thank you, Sarah. And I want to first apologize to everyone that this came up rather quickly, but we have been, our team has been working hard and to get to an agreement with Beth on, you know, the main points. And we thought it would be important to get it done if we could, so that we can move on to the really exciting and great things we're going to do for the district and not the boring, you know, legal contracts. So, you know, as you all know, Lynn Collins and Dennis Quant and Mark Healy and I were the team that was tasked with negotiating. We had, I want to shout out to Dennis because, as you guys know, Dennis is what I would call a genius in terms of numbers. And he was shocking to me. Okay, now I can't balance a checkbook, but what we did, you see a salary number in here. We worked with Beth to figure out what the comparables are, and Dennis figured out exactly what the salary ranges are, what the right comparables were, what issues were taken into account and weren't taken into account that affect the starting salary, and came up with a number that you know was acceptable to Beth, and it was a great process. And so you see the number in there under the compensation, and there's it's a 2.5% increase each year. So then what we did was, once we had sort of agreement on the financial terms, I sat down and read about 10 or 12 superintendent contracts from other districts. I got the Mass Association of School Committee contract, their model contract, and I looked at Andrew's contract, Andrew's last contract, and from that I mostly used Andrew's contract as a template because I felt that it was comfortable because we knew we'd used it in the past. Okay. And so that's basically, you know, you can read through it, but I want to assure you that all of the terms that are in this agreement are pretty much in every superintendent contract that I looked at in one form or another. There's nothing in here that's unusual, that varies, that is, you know, outside of the norm. I want to point out two other than compensation, okay? And we talked about, there's a 3-year term in here. There are 2 provisions I want to point out to everyone. First is section 4, which is the evaluation provision, which includes establishing goals before the beginning of each school year. And that's just important for us to keep on our radar, because I think it's a helpful thing. It'll be a helpful thing for Beth. So that's in there. You can read what we're going to agree to do. And again, I can't remember which contract I got that from. And the only really unusual provision in here is section 6, okay? And what we're going to, Beth has told us that she wants her first year as superintendent probably best not to be working on her doctorate. And so we've agreed that she will get an annuity. She'll get a contribution to an annuity for the FY23. And then after that, it's her choice. If she decides to work on the doctorate, we'll give her money toward the doctorate. If not, a portion of the money will go towards towards an annuity. And the language, you'll see language in 6.2 about how the tuition reimbursement works. I lifted that language from Beth's existing employment agreement. And beyond that, everything else is really standard. The bereavement leave section came right from our collective bargaining agreement with our teachers. And pretty much everything else is standard. And so in terms of process, I put together an initial draft. I circulated it to the committee, including my favorite employment lawyer next to myself, Lynn Collins, who also gave it a very deep read. And then it also has been reviewed by Joan Stein, our outside counsel, because unfortunately neither Lynn nor I serve as counsel so we needed to get a read from outside counsel, and she has blessed this as well. So I think that's all it.
Well, thank you to all of the members of that negotiation team, Judy, Lynn, Mark, Dennis, and to Beth for what I hope was a collaborative process and a result that all can be happy with. Are there questions from committee members? The understanding is, I think that we will be voting to approve this contract this evening, which nicely would prevent us from having to have a meeting scheduled outside of our regular schedule just for that purpose. So thank you for piggybacking on this meeting. Kate?
Thanks, Sarah. I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank this subcommittee for all of their hard work. And oops, I keep losing my video. And I'm so excited that we're moving forward here. I appreciate the input and all the time spent by everyone. So no questions, just a multitude of gratitude. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Maggie?
I want to echo Kate's thanks to all the committee members, to Beth for the collaborative process, to Dennis for the astute financial analysis, which certainly along the way was helpful to me in understanding the depth of comps. And, a lot of things are hidden in different contracts. So if people are looking out on the public domain and maybe they look at our number for Beth and they look at a colleague in a different district, it might look lower, it might look higher. There's oftentimes a lot of things underlying and embedded in other people's contracts that are not evident and completely obvious. And I also just wanted to point out for the community, this is a 3-year contract, and sometimes you see folks in other districts who get longer contracts, 4 or 5 years. Given how I feel about Mrs. McCoy and her work in our district, I would really love if we could offer her a 10-year contract, but just so everybody knows, our bylaws of our organization and our regional agreement prevent us from signing any agreement with a superintendent that is longer than 3 years. So just, sometimes that comes out there. Why didn't you pin her down for longer? And that is the reason why. So thank you, everybody, for all the work. And welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Maggie. I meant to say that and forgot about the 3 years, but yeah.
Anyone else? All right, so if I understand this correctly, we should probably do 2 motions, right? One from Union 50 to approve this and one from the region. And I suppose we could also do sort of a symbolic vote from our remaining Dover and Sherborn members who are not on Union 50. But am I right about that process, Judy?
Yes. That's exactly right.
All right, so we can start with Union 50, if that's okay. Is there a motion from Union 50 to approve the contract for Superintendent Beth McCoy as presented this evening? And as a reminder, our Union 50 members are myself, Mark Healy, and Colleen Burt from Dover, and from Sherborn, Nancy Cordell, Amanda Brown, and Dennis Quant. Is that correct? Great. All right. So Union 50, is there such a motion?
Mark Healy.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Mark Healy, so moved.
Thanks, Mark. Second. Amanda, do you want to take that?
Amanda Brown, second.
Any discussion? All right. We'll take a roll call vote. Mark?
Mark Healy, yes.
Colleen?
Colleen Burt, yes.
Sarah Gutierrez Dunn, yes. It's from the Dover side. From the Sherborn side, Nancy?
Nancy Cordell, yes.
Amanda?
Amanda Brown, yes.
And Dennis?
Dennis Quant, yes.
Thank you all. Kate, do you want to do this for the region?
Yes, thank you. Do I have a motion from the Regional School Committee to approve the superintendent-elect contract?
So moved. Judy Miller, so moved.
Thank you, Judy.
Lynn Collins, second.
Lynn, second. Thank you. All right, roll call. Maggie Sharon.
Maggie Sharon, yes.
Judy Miller.
Judy Miller, yes.
Lynn Collins.
Lynn Collins, yes.
Angie Johnson.
Angie Johnson, yes.
Tracy Mannion.
Tracy Mannion, yes.
And Kate Potter, yes.
Thank you, Kate. And I want to give our remaining members on the Dover and Sherborn school committees the opportunity to voice their votes as well. So I think from Dover, we also have Liz Grossman.
Liz Grossman, yes.
And Jeff Cassidy.
Jeff Cassidy, yes.
And from Sherborn, Amanda, do you want to?
Sure. We have David Keithis.
Yep, David Kazis, yes.
And Gita Russo.
Gita Russo, yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks all. Judy?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I've really enjoyed doing this work. I am so looking forward to working with our next fantastic, fabulous superintendent. We are going to do great things, all of us together, and I'm wildly excited. And I really am glad we've got this portion behind us and we're ready to sort of move forward. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all.
If I may say thank you too as well to the negotiation team and the entire committee. I am very excited about the work ahead of us. And as I said to the negotiation team, this is not a class that you take in leadership school on how to negotiate a contract. So I appreciate the collaborative process and like Judy said, excited to put this behind us so we can focus on the kids now. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. All right. We have a consent agenda this evening that consists of 2 sets of minutes from our joint school committee meetings on January 13th and January 18th. Is there a motion from the, I guess we can start with Dover School Committee to approve the consent agenda? Sorry, I'm looking for hands.
Grossman, so moved.
Thanks, Liz. A second?
Colleen Burt, second.
Any discussion, questions, comments about those minutes? I did see one small typo on the January 18th minutes that I might ask get fixed before these are finalized. I'm just trying to scroll through. It was in, sorry, my computer is acting slow here. It was in, I think it was bullet 3. And there was an extra preposition, but I'm having trouble landing on the document itself. But I think if we read through that bullet, it was about the superintendent update. Maybe others might see what I'm talking about. I think it was the additional of surveillance testing, if I'm remembering the word. So I think we either change that to additional testing or something, but remove that extra preposition. Sorry. So any other questions, comments? All right, so we'll take a roll call vote to approve the consent agenda as revised, as we just discussed. Liz?
Liz Grossman, yes.
Mark?
Mark Healy, yes.
Colleen?
Colleen Burt, yes.
And Jeff?
Jeff Cassidy, yes.
And Sarah Gutierrez done, yes. Kate, do you want to take the region, and then maybe Amanda will ask you to man Sherborn, if that's okay?
Yep, absolutely. Do I have a motion from the region to approve the consent agenda?
Angie Johnson, so moved.
Thank you,
All in
Angie.
second.
Lynn, second. Thank you. Roll call, Maggie Sharon.
Maggie Sharon, yes.
Judy Miller.
Judy Miller, yes.
Lynn Collins.
Lynn Collins, yes.
Angie Johnson.
Angie Johnson, yes.
Tracy Mannion.
Tracy Mannion, yes.
Good question. And Kate Potter, yes. Thank you, everyone.
All right. And do I have a motion from Sherborn to approve the consent agenda?
Dennis Quant, so moved.
Thanks, Dennis. And a second?
Peter
Russo, second. Thank you, Gita. Any discussion from Sherborn?
Amanda, I have one thing in the January 13th minutes. It's noting that I voted twice. One says Union 50 and one says Sherborn. I think that they should just be amended so that I'm part of the Union 50 vote, not the Sherborn vote.
Okay.
That's on the bottom of the second page. Other than that, I thought it was accurate.
Okay. So shall we take a roll call vote to approve the minutes as discussed? Dennis?
Dennis Quant, yes.
And Gita?
Gita Russo, yes.
Nancy? Are you still here? Did she go away? Maybe Sheila dropped off. David?
I'm sorry, Nancy Cordell, yes.
Oh, there you are. Thank you. David?
Yep, David Kazis, yes.
And Amanda Brown, yes. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda this evening. Thank you all. Shall we poll to adjourn? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.